Okay, so today's March 31st. Tomorrow, April 1st at 8 a.m. is our NCAE competition for Blue Team. Let's go ahead and do a rapid review of topics 31 through 38 on our blue.ufsit.club site under this NCAE prep section. So, okay, we've covered most of the stuff before this in our meetings, which I haven't recorded, unfortunately, but I'll come back to that one day to upload these videos for the stuff before this. But this is mainly just to get this out and prepare for competition. You've hopefully read through or attended our meetings for all of these notes, and we're just going to get it over with in terms of just finishing the stuff that we need to finish to know everything that we need to know, basically, to do the stuff that we get assigned to do tomorrow. So, quick thing before we start, quickly just review topics number 29 and 30, just like skim through them really fast. I covered SSH keys and I covered how to use them for the most part during our meeting, but there might have been like a few things that I forgot, so just go through 29 and 30, just skim those, pause the video right now, and then I'll come back and... Okay, so hopefully you've done that now, and let's go ahead and just get right into it with DNS. So, what is DNS? You type in google.com, right? You go to Google, the website, but when you type in google.com, what's really happening is there's a DNS server that I'm using somewhere that's translating google.com into an actual IP address, right? So, that's the main use for DNS. There's a little bit more to it, and we might get into it here, but for the most part, just think of that when you think of DNS. So forward lookups is what I just did, where I typed in the name, and it took me to I typed in the name and then it resolved that to an IP address to actually display the web content to me. Reverse lookups, on the other hand, are when you look up the IP address and you want to see if a domain is associated with that IP address. So that's what it comes down to, really. And so how do we configure a DNS server actually, though? So we know how it works, but how do we, if we're tasked to set up a domain on a local network for some kind of organization or something, how do we actually do that? Specifically with Linux, we're going to be looking at here, and Ubuntu even more specifically. But this applies to any Linux computer or any Linux setup that can install or has already installed the bind suite of programs. So that's how you install it with Debian-based distributions. I also have it installed here with Arch Linux Quick Flex. So there's that, right? And so what actually happens when you have this bind program is, let me go to the etc directory. If you remember, this is where all our service configuration related files are, right? So if I can type in ls and there's a bunch of stuff, right? So we can go look through it all here, and eventually we would find named.conf. That's what we're interested in, because named right here is let me zoom that in, is the name of the specific program that's included with bind that can let us configure DNS and domains and whatnot. So let's go ahead and actually open this up. So anything else that I missed here? Oh, right. Before we actually do anything, let's just make sure that we have it installed. So sudo systemctl, if I can type status bind, and you'll notice it can't be found because it's not actually bind. Bind is the overall package of software. Named is what we're interested in within that software suite. And as you can see, it looks like it failed. Oh, and it's because I have, and this is the useful thing about the systemctl status command. I was doing a recording earlier that I had to basically scrap, and I edited this config, and I edited it wrongly. Like, something's going on here. There's an unexpected token somewhere, so I must have messed up my writing of that file, the syntax, essentially, like a programming language. So, but other than that, the service is actually running. So if I do systemctl enable -- now, or just restart named, it's going to go ahead and do that, and it's still going to fail because the config is set up wrong. But just for you, if you did this, and if it was like a fresh install, this would not be happening, so just ignore that for now. So let's take a look at named.conf. So what is this named.conf file? Essentially, it's what we call, and you have to open this with sudo, I forgot. But essentially, these are a bunch of zones that we can configure for our DNS server to tell it, hey, for this domain, if you want the information associated with that, go to this file. right? And in the case of reverse lookups, if we're telling the server or the service, if you want this IP address, if you want to see what domains are associated with it, then look in this file path right here for this file. And so we're going to have to make that file here in a bit. And I think the error here, well, actually there's multiple errors, I think. Oh, I'm missing an opening bracket there, so that's what's happening. And so I'm going to have to go back and edit the notes here that I have eventually after this video is uploaded and stuff. So I have these typed out already because these are what I have listed here in the example that they gave you in the sandbox challenge, the sort of challenge or the tutorial challenges to do before the competition. They gave us this specific scenario where we have to configure ncaecybergames.org. Pardon me, this is actually not something that they asked for specifically, but it's something that they go through in the NCAE videos, and you can watch those. I'll link those in the description if you want to see more fledged out examples of what I'm reviewing here. So they're asking us, hey, set up this domain, ncaecybergames.org, and set that up on our Ubuntu machine, which is this IP address. The team number, it has to do with the challenge. You don't have to worry about that. Just pretend that this is like some valid number. So essentially, we're setting up the reverse zone for this domain, and also the forward zone. I'm just going to call it that. I don't know. It's probably not the right terminology, but this is one way to go about it, at least. So yeah, with that said, you can go ahead and save that. And now when I quit and I restart named, let's see if it gives me the same error that it was giving me before. I don't know what happened there. Oh, status named. And you can see it's active and it's running, and it gives me no errors this time, so we're all set there. And then one thing, okay, so I'm not going to review this because it's kind of tedious. It's not too hard. Just go back and hopefully you remember your networking. Hopefully you know what a subnet, or hopefully you know what a network mask is, a net mask, sorry. And hopefully you know what the CIDR notation is with the /24 or like /32 or 18, or what's 24 minus 8, that's, yeah, /16, for example. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Go and review these particular sets of notes right here. You'll notice for the reverse lookup, it's not just a regular IP address. It's actually like kind of twisted around, and it's also missing one extra octet here at the end, and that has to do with the net mask that is associated with that network. So go ahead and just review these notes here. I'm not going to cover them right now. So we have that, and now what we have to do is we have to actually make these files that we're telling the DNS service, hey, go look for the associated DNS stuff for this IP or this domain in this file. So we're going to have to go and make those, right? So I don't even have the etc/bind directory, so I would actually have to go and first of all make mkdir etc/bind, and you have to do that as sudo because we're in a directory that I can't access as a regular user. And what else? And then a zones directory within that. So, you know, you go here, bind, and then make dir zones, and then keep forgetting to do that as sudo. And then you have the zones, and then you would go ahead and make the files that are going to look somewhat similar to this, right? So I'm not going to do this. I'm going to quickly gloss over this, but essentially you go in that directory, the zones directory that I just made, and you make the two files for the two different zone blocks of text that we specified in the config file. And once again, that was the named.conf in the etc directory. So you can take a look at these, go through them in the notes whenever you have the time, so you can get an idea as to what you're specifying here. But essentially, you're specifying the subdomains here. That's what's important. So for example, here in this forward lookup file, we're making it so that sandbox-ubuntu.ncaecybergames.org is going to forward us to the Ubuntu machine, and so will www, as a matter of fact. So that's that. And for the reverse lookup, instead of subdomains, it's the IP octets that we didn't include earlier in this named.conf like block of text, essentially. So review that if you need more details on that, but essentially that's a good template to use. You can sort of look at these examples and base your competition stuff on these. So moving on, setting the DNS server. So we've configured the service, right? But if we went on the machine and actually went to like ncaecybergames.org at that point, after setting these up and creating these files and setting the DNS zone, creating the DNS zone, you still wouldn't be able to reach the website by typing in ncacybergames.org because you haven't told your computer, hey, I want to use this server as my DNS server. And the way you actually do that is you edit, in Linux at least, the /etc/resolve.conf file. And this is actually, you'll have this one even if you don't have bind or whatever installed for DNS. So I have this too. It's resolve.conf. And you'll see, for me, these are my name servers right here. These two right here. And I actually don't sometimes these get set automatically, like these off the top of my head, I don't know what they are. Sometimes you can add like a name, if you're having DNS issues, sometimes you can add like name server 8.8.8.8, that's the Google public DNS, stuff like that. But for now, I'm gonna leave it as what I have it. You would have to go in this situation and add the IP of the DNS server that you're creating. So that's how that works. And so having said that, yeah, I'm pausing for a second because I hope my mic audio is recording. This would be a shame if it wasn't, but let's just assume that it is and move on. And yeah, that's how you set the DNS server. After you set that, you save and quit. You restart the actually, do you need to restart? I actually don't think you need to restart any services after you edit that file, but you could restart the bind service if you want, just to be safe. But essentially, after you edit that and you save and quit, you should have that DNS server set. So now your DNS stuff that you configured on your local machine, at least, will now resolve to what you set it to be. So setting the, yeah, there we go. Okay, so NS lookup is the other thing. So after you have this all set up, if you can do it by, like, you can check it by accessing it through the web browser, but a more direct, like, specific way to do this would be with the NS lookup command. So I can do nslookup.ufl.edu, for example, and it'll give me the IP address associated with that. And so you could do that with your domain that you created and see if it returns the expected IP. So what if you want to add additional zones, right? Like, what if we wanted to use the, or first of all, before I get to additional zones, what if we want to have the DNS server be set for other machines on the network? And it's the same thing. You don't have to edit any, you don't have to install bind or anything. You just have to edit the resolve.conf file and set that as the DNS server. That's how you do this in Linux, essentially. So that's that, basically. So if you want to add stuff, like if, for example, there's like a score check server, let's just say, and it's at this IP address, and it's an external web server, or just a server, sorry. If you want to add that internally as your own custom subdomain, you can go ahead and do that by editing the forward sort of DNS file that we have here in the zones directory within the bind directory, and you would add that to the last. If I scroll up here, it's basically adding that to the end of this right here. So adding it onto these other ones that we have defined, except instead of pointing them to our IP for the server that we're using bind on, we're forwarding it to, or we're associating it with the score check server in this case, as an example. So remember to restart after you do this. Just sudo systemctl restart named. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. You always want to restart services after you edit config files for the most part. And confirm that with nslookup. That's how you do that. And this is how you would, I'm gonna skip this, but this is how you would go about setting up a reverse lookup rule for that same service that we were just talking about, the IP or the score checking service. You would go ahead and do that here. Read, if in the competition they ask you to add a reverse lookup DNS like requirement, then go ahead and read this and base it off of that. So, okay, we're done with that. How do we do this through the router? I'm going to quickly go over this, I think, because it's going to be similar to what we did with HTTP for our web server. You're going to want to edit. Oh, right. Okay, so on our routers, resolve.conf. So no, for external machines, when they're trying to access our internal web server, keep in mind this Ubuntu machine's an internal web server, they're going to have to go through the router. So what our local machines, if they're internal machines that are on our local network, meaning that they have the same 192.whatever.168 addresses, which I'm pretty sure is what the Ubuntu machine had, they can set their DNS server directly as that machine's address. But if you're on the outside, like not on the same network, if your IP is like a 170 dot something, for example, and you're not on the same local network or subnet, you would have to actually set the router as your DNS server. which the router then forwards that request if you set it up properly with this firewall CMD command. It's going to set it, it's going to port forward it so that when it detects incoming DNS traffic, it's going to be like, okay, I'm getting a DNS request from this other computer and it's contacting me, but because I have this port forward rule set with the firewall CMD command, I'm going to just forward that to my internal machine that I know has a DNS, the DNS service, and that's going to take care of it. So, and we've done some of this stuff before. Go back to the router section if you need a recap on how to make all that traffic work and flow back and forth. So you want to reload, the key thing here, reload the firewall D program after you do that. Confirm that with by listing all the network zones, and then you can also NS lookup to confirm that it actually worked. So yeah, very similar to the HTTP command that we ran to set up port forwarding and whatnot. And trying to see if there's anything else here that I'm forgetting. So I realize that explanation is probably like a little bit hard to follow when I'm not like drawing out something directly. I'm kind of just talking. It can be kind of hard to like picture that in your head, which is all right. This is a quick review. I'm going into assuming you kind of have an idea. You maybe like glossed over these notes at some point, or you just know what you're doing from beforehand. Anyways, we're done with DNS. So that was a lot, and you can always go back and check the notes. blue.ufsit.club is the website. So okay, Rsync. Rsync is going to, you can think of Rsync as a better way to copy, like instead of, so normally if I have a file, right, if I'm in my home directory and I want to copy, I have this file called test.py. Let's say I want to copy cp test.py into test2.py. I can copy that. So Rsync is essentially a better CP command for backing up stuff, essentially. And we'll see an example here. Let's just get straight to it. If I do rsync-av, you can ignore what the --delete option means for now. Stuff into backups. This is going to take the stuff, the files that are in the stuff directory, and it's going to copy them to the backups directory. But the difference between this and the copy command is that the rsync command only copies over the differences. So for example, if the test.py has a if this test.py has like this at the end, like let's say originally it had this, but then I edit it and I add like this line and I save it, Rsync is not gonna, the CP command would go and individually read it line by line and copy everything over. The Rsync command goes and it's more smart about this. It checks, hey, these first couple of lines are the same. I'm not even going to bother going through byte by byte and modifying that or copying that over. I'm just going to copy over this last thing that was added that's not present in the old backup that I have of that. So that's why Rsync is useful. And the --delete is going to make it so that when I run this command, if I delete something in the stuff folder, that deletion is going to get reflected in the backups folder. So it might seem like a risky thing to do, but in a production environment, like in a real life environment, you're probably not going to want to keep around files that you're deleting for too long, right? In a competition scenario, on the other hand, we might not want to include this, and I would actually suggest not to include the --delete. So yeah, you can read more about this if you want. So there you go. Think carefully about whether you want file removals to reflect on this rsync stuff that you're doing. Okay, that's rsync. Now, cron. What is cron? A command, or essentially a program that helps you run commands on a routine basis as often as you would like. So you can check the status of it with sudo systemctl status cron. I use this myself to push, or for me it's actually crony, but for you it's going to be cron, unless you're using Arch Linux, in which case it'll be crony, but it's the same thing. And you can see it's running, right, which is cool because I actually use this, and I'm going to show you a really easy practical application of this. If I go ahead and type in crontab-e, you're going to see all the cron jobs that I have, right? And so I have two here, right? I have packcache.clear. This clears the package manager cache, which tends to take up a lot of space on my device. So that clears it out. I actually don't, off the top of my head, don't know. So let's actually go to this website, crontab.guru, and we're going to type in these first 5 characters, right? We're going to copy them and we're going to paste them. Oh, I copied them wrong, I guess. We're going to paste them, and you can see this website it's kind of an easy way to just quick and cheap way to just figure out what they actually mean. You can go through it. The syntax is not too hard to like learn, right? But you can use this if you want to save a little bit of time. So it'll tell you, yeah, at 0, 0, 0. So basically at midnight every Sunday at midnight every Sunday. And you can read about the syntax if you want. I'm not gonna get into that, but you can see here it's kind of already explaining it to you in the crontab-e file automatically, and yours will probably be even more verbose than mine is. I kind of cut mine down just to like not have as much stuff in this file, but it's essentially the first thing is the month, the second thing is the hour, third thing is the day of the month, so like the 15th or the 12th or whatever, and the month itself, like what in the month of the year, and then the date of the week. So in this case it'd be the 0th hour or the 0th minute at the 0th hour on every day of the month. That's what the asterisk means. On every month, on the 0th day of the week, which I guess is Sunday. So, and this one, and this bottom one right here, it actually runs every minute. So every minute, every hour, every day of the month, every day of the week, it's CDing into this directory, it's adding everything, it's git committing it, and this makes it so that when you go to this GitHub repo, when I'm making changes to this file, it'll push them to this repo automatically. I don't have to do that every time I edit it, which is pretty useful. So there you go. That's what cron is, and I think that gets across the general idea, hopefully. But here's the thing, that's not all the cron tabs. When I do crontab-e, this is not all the cron tabs that are running on my machine. What we have to do to look at those is go to /var/spool, and then you guys will probably have a, you guys will probably have a cron tabs directory underneath that. I actually don't. It's a distribution thing. You're probably gonna have it on your distribution unless you use Arch Linux, then you won't. But essentially, it'll be here, and you'll see the different cron tabs that are listed here, right? So you're gonna be able to see other users. Sorry, I need to correct myself. Actually, I've been saying all the cron tabs. You're gonna be seeing all users cron tabs in here, not all of the cron tabs, and we'll get to that in a second. I don't have any other users on my computer, so it's only my cron tab. And my username is BR, so you can see that there. What else? So I have 8% on my computer, so I'm gonna quickly, actually I'm gonna pause this video right now because I'm gonna run out of battery, and I'm just gonna upload what I have, and then we're gonna continue off on system-wide cron jobs. So, and also how to use it with Rsync. So, like and subscribe.